views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Let me be your lighthouse so I can show you the way. Let me be your shining light, I'll keep you from drifting away. I'm the one that makes you try.
Well, hello. Welcome to my show. This is Patty Hunter of Patty's Page. Welcome. To my right is my co-host, John Dickmeyer.
How you doing, Patty?
How are you? I'm fine. And to his right is Avon Waters.
Thanks for having me, Patty.
Nah, you're welcome. And you are the artist of the Americas. What does that mean?
I have a studio both here and in South America.
South America? What
South
part?
America, Bogota, Colombia.
Mm.
My wife is Colombian born, and so it sounds more impressive than it is. It's just I can't be away from art, so I set up a studio there.
So, where were you born?
I was born in Peru, Indiana.
Oh.
And so an hour or so south of here, and grew up on a farm. And
see a lot of animals and vegetables and everything to draw.
Yeah.
Oh.
Did everything from milking cows to raising sheep and hogs and slaughtering cattle and grain farming, and all that kind of informs what I do. It becomes part of what makes me me.
So when did you move to Fort Wayne? Are you here in Fort Wayne now?
No, I actually live in Converse, Indiana,
Oh.
which is about an hour or so south of here, near Missinwa Reservoir.
Oh. So what's it like living there?
It's great because since a lot of my work is informed by the nature and the animals and the trees.
You have a big backyard, eh?
I've got a huge backyard just a few miles away, and I'm out there hiking if I'm not in the studio, or I'm out painting in the little towns and hamlets.
Which animals do you like the best in that environment?
Right now it's got to be the birds. It used to be the cows, but now this year I've gotten into a lot of work with small birds and
Birds
painting
of a
those. Right.
So your style, when you first started out, how old were you when you first started to paint?
I'm not sure. I think it's before age 6. 6 and 7 is the earliest piece of artwork, and it's a piece of pottery. My mother was going to college taking art classes. And so after she passed away,
I'm sorry.
we went through some belongings and saw this little vase, turned it over, and she had put the date that I created it on there, and I was about 7 years old.
That'd be
And
great
I know I had been drawing and painting prior to that, so pretty much most of my life.
That'd be a great heirloom.
Yeah, it sits on our...
I mean, 100 years from now, you know how much that would be in the antique?
So, yeah.
So,
Well, can you tell us something about that piece of pottery? Did that foretell where you were going in art?
Yeah, in a way, I remember making it after I saw it. I didn't remember making it and that it existed. After I saw it again, I remember making that, and I remember the process of working with my hands. And so today I don't do pottery and I don't do sculpture, but because I use pastels and I use oils and I use drawing, I'm always making my hands create something.
so okay, you go ahead.
And that's what's necessary. That's the artist in the individual. It's using the hands. It's eye-hand coordination and creating the subject however you create it.
It's
Yeah.
like therapy, really, in a way.
Very
Who
therapeutic.
influenced you to become a painter?
The when my mother was taking college classes, she found a group of professional so-called Indiana artists, and a gentleman named Thad Miller, who lived in Somerset, Indiana, which is again near the reservoir. That time it was along the river. The reservoir didn't exist.
I can just see the paintings.
And he was a very dynamic individual, and he was, always laughing and full of life. And I just got hooked being around him. And all through up even into my college years, I would go and visit him, and we would talk art. And that's something that I've continued today. Although he did portraits, he didn't do very many landscapes.
But you,
It
what
was
do you
that
basically
interaction.
do? You basically do wildlife, birds.
I do primarily
Landscape.
landscapes and
Landscapes.
wildlife,
Yeah.
and then I do this expressionistic style,
Tell me about that.
and it's based in nature. I can't really call it abstract, but if people looked at it, they would say, "Oh, what is that?" But as soon as you put a title to it, or they see, you tell them that, it was based on a set of trees, or it was based on a set of clouds, then they can look at it and they can see that they can see those images in it. So they need just this little bit of push to understand it. And so many people say, I don't understand abstract. And this is expressionistic in the sense that it's got different colors than what you and I would see, as opposed to the impressionists.
Well, you
And
know,
so-
with water and seaweed and everything like that, you can do expression with that and not make it look like it's actually the seaweed itself, but
Right.
the rippling of the waters and the way it, I
Yeah.
can see it. I can see it.
You have to think about it in a different way, I believe.
It's like liking jazz,
But the viewer has to put him or herself into the art to interpret it, and that's the value, I think, of impressionistic art. Because it means something to the artist, but it may mean something a little different to the viewer who's looking at it.
In the eye of the beholder.
Of course.
Yeah.
Also, with you painting and everything like that, you matured from one level to another as you grew up.
Right. Because this gentleman, he was really into Rembrandt and the Dutch masters.
Right.
My colors were kind of brown like his, but it was never doing anything that was
exactamo.
like him. Then in high school, you learn about the Impressionists, you learn about Van Gogh, and so then my colors brightened up. And as I went into college, I got more interested in other movements.
Sure.
Then as an adult, what really, I think, informs my work today are some of the post-expressionists, which use a lot of color but use reality as a basis, like Wolf Kahn. Wolf Kahn is still alive, lives on the East Coast. Unless he's passed away recently, and I wasn't sure of
How
it.
old would he be?
He would be early 90s now. But he, you could have a pink sky and orange grass, or orange trees and yellow grass and green skies, but you still knew it was a landscape. And it still visually reads as something that people can understand. And one of my favorites in pastel is a gentleman who lived in France but was from Philadelphia. Very, very not
I
well
love
known.
the French paintings.
Oh yeah, and He used pastels, oil pastels. And he was Charles Henry from Muth. Very little was known about him, but he's become very popular because pastels now are very popular.
So how long have you been with the pastels?
I've been doing oils all my life, but I decided, I had met some pastel friends of mine last year, and I started the last
relatively
week
new.
of last year. So basically,
Still
about
learning
6
how to
months.
work with the pastels?
Still learning how to work with them. I've taken private lessons from some of the better Indiana pastelists. And
You take
and I'm
courses?
having, no, lessons. Yeah.
Right.
And so I've really kind of learned from them just here in the last 6 months and having a ball with it.
So how many paintings have you done over the years?
It's hard to say. I can tell you just from January to now, I've done probably about 150, 175. So I typically do anywhere from 175 to 200 a year.
What do you do with them?
I try to sell them,
You try to sell them?
and
Have
many
your own
of them.
gallery or?
July 6th in Amboy, Indiana, I open a little storefront. My studio's behind it. And my wife and I bought an old 100-year-old building. It used to be a post office. And I spent a year remodeling the inside. And so that's my studio now.
Is that far from Fort Wayne? I'm trying to remember.
It's
which
about
one.
an hour and 15 minutes.
North, south, east?
South,
South.
yes.
Straight down.
Yeah, if you put a dot on a map between Peru, Wabash, Kokomo, and Marion, it would be kind of in the middle of that dot. So basically in the middle of nowhere.
So you found the library here okay then?
Yes, besides the construction.
Oh boy. You might say that.
And one-way streets.
Oh,
Yes. So you're going to show us some paintings, aren't you? You're going to show how you do your own.
Yeah, I typically start with with music. I won't do it today, but I put earbuds in and turn my iPod on, and I listen to alternative music,
Da, 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 da.
and I listen to the alternative beats, and I make these little itty bitty black and white sketches called notans. And these notans, basically, I am not thinking about birds, I'm not thinking about trees, I'm not thinking about anything other than the beat that I'm listening to. And I let my hand determine what comes out in the design.
So let's see what you do.
Okay.
What you can show us. You're too kind. I'm glad you came on my show, and
Okay.
we want to see what he does. Are you going to explain what you're doing?
This basically started out, as I said, one of the black and white sketches, a notan. And knowing kind of that I came on today, I didn't want to start from scratch. So it's just the basic darks and lights that I found in the notan.
What's a notan?
A notan is a basic black and white design. And it is, it basically, out of a whole page of these little thumbnail, they call them thumbnail because they're no bigger than that. Out of this whole thumbnail, you have all these different designs from the music. And I look and see which is going to be visually the better design. And I may change it a little bit as I move it from the notan, the black and white, and start to add color.
Oh, that's nice.
And I'll start, so in this particular one, I had some darks, and I had about a third of it over here, but 2/3 is kind of weighted over here. So compositionally, that makes this more interesting than some of the others that were on the page. So I start out with that, and then I stick my earphones in again, and when I get to a stage like this, and I put classical music on. And it's usually violin, classical music. And so when I'm working with the classical music, then I will pick up some of the beats and some of the rhythms and begin work on it. But my goal here basically has been, we have both hard and soft pastels, and my goal basically here has been to try to add a little color to these things, and I always start with the darks. And once I get some darks in there,
What are you making?
I don't know. I don't know.
That's
this is
cool. That's
this
what I
is
like.
the it comes from that music. It comes from the beats. It comes from some of the things that I'm hearing and how I feel that day.
So are you humming to yourself then?
No, I'm not. This is
cold
this
turkey?
is cold turkey, and not all of them turn out as good as others. And
I like the colors. Very nice. Purple, blue.
then I will start putting in lighter
Lighter.
tones and try to join the two together. Now the goal in this kind of art, you know, to me this is kind of turning into a representational abstraction of a group of trees against the sky or
Yeah,
something like
the
that.
light of the sky.
As I'm building along here.
Yeah,
And I'm really about energy.
yeah.
And listening to that music gives me that energy. And many people would take a paintbrush and just scoop along here and make a few marks, but and they would be smoothed out, and some people
Yeah,
rub it
it's
in, but
blended
I don't
in.
do that.
No,
I like that
it
that
would ruin
energy.
it really if you blend in.
And I
Like-
search around for some colors and find some, and I'll try some, and I don't like them, and I'll try some others here.
This is true impressionism, because it's based in the music,
Yes. Like
But- but it makes it.
yeah, that little red
it
looks
appears
like a,
on the
yeah.
on the canvas.
you know what that red looks like? It looks like
Right in there.
what you might call a cardinal.
Could
I
be.
love cardinals.
Oh, and I didn't bring any cardinal pictures with me, but I've done 2 or 3 cardinals so far this spring. My wife loves cardinals. We put a whole bunch of stuff out for them to eat, and then we ended up with a lot of other birds that were in addition to the cardinals.
What are you doing now, Dal?
This is, I'm taking the side of what they have some grayed colors. And when you get a bright color in the background, sometimes it pops forward,
Yeah.
and you can put a little bit of a gray
Come.
violet over it
Yeah. Blend
and
it in.
push it back
Yeah, it looks good.
before you start into,
What color is that? Green?
this is a kind of an earthy green.
Uh,
And I start coming into here, leaving the darks and going around the edges.
How long does it normally take to do a fair size picture? About a couple hours? Or?
This particular size picture, a couple hours to an hour or two for 2 or 3 days.
Wow. Depends on
Um,
what you're doing.
It depends on how well things go. Sometimes things don't go well. And
So, yeah, c'est la vie, you make it.
well, you try to save it,
Yeah.
and then you get back, you know, and so you work hard to save it, and pretty soon it just defeats you.
You won awards on some of your artistry?
Yeah, I've won a number of awards.
from where?
And I've been in a number of recognized shows across the state of Indiana. Miniaturista in Muncie has a show that's all about landscapes. It's actually the red-tail hawk
Oh,
conservatory.
I love hawks. My favorite is a snowy white owl.
Oh,
Isn't
yeah.
that beautiful?
And I've only seen those mounted on walls, and that's
I
the
saw
only way
one.
I've seen them, and I don't like to see them mounted on walls.
You know, what I seen one when I was little, outside our bathroom window. It was sitting in the willow tree, looking right at me through the window. And
Wow.
the eyes were must have been about 3 or 4 inches wide. You know, and he's a
What
big one.
color are the eyes?
Green.
Isn't that wonderful? You
Golden
can remember
green.
the color of the eyes.
The eyes, it's like cats and things that
Well,
they,
I have 3 cats.
Have you done cats?
I've done some drawings.
We have
You were
3 of them.
talking earlier about how the therapeutic aspects of
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
and I find these rather nerve-wracking because they will move in and out of good to bad, and sometimes I think
When
they're
you
good.
finish, you go, oh boy.
Yeah, and sometimes I think they're good, and 3 weeks later they turn bad. So I
Yeah,
don't know,
depends
you
on
know,
how you
who
feel.
came in and changed them.
Or
You know,
you're changing of your mind.
yeah, changing of my mind, right? That's the real key right there. And so the idea of going to pencil, I'm very, very comfortable with pencil, and I sit down in a chair and I can do something very realistic, almost photographic with a pencil. And I've done a number of cats and animals in pencil, but it's totally different than this. It's strange to some people how somebody that can make a photographic type drawing can turn around and do this. So,
See, Livy? So, are you going to do much more, my English?
do what?
You're going to do more, a lot more on what you're doing right now, or
Oh yeah, I could.
you can go on for
I could
hours? and-
go on and on and on, but that gives you an idea
Well, that looks
of-
nice.
of the method, and it's starting to take effect. I think probably this one will end up being a group of trees, and I'm starting to see a path coming through here, and maybe something in the background here before the sky. But it's that sort of thing. It all starts out abstract, nothing to begin with. It's
Right.
all reaction to the vibrations in the world around me.
I'd like to get back to the original music that inspires you initially.
Okay.
And you call that alternative music. How would you identify that in terms of sound?
Probably some of the early alternative groups were like Nirvana and the Ramones. It's rock and roll that took on a different musical rhythm than traditional rock and roll of the 70s and 80s. And so they call it alternative now because it doesn't follow the same musical rules.
And the classical music that you use later on, is it true classical? Is it the Mozart, Haydn type, or is it more romantic?
Oh,
It's very
Renaissance?
high energy classical, traditional classical, like Beethoven's dun 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 dun, or the
1812 overture.
1812s to
Okay.
Stokowski, and one of my favorites is Vivaldi, which is the Storm, because it's got a lot of, as far as violin, it's got a lot of changes and a lot of striking
just like
of the
on
chords.
Walt Disney Fantasia.
Yeah.
That's my
So.
favorite.
But yeah, it's so I go from this rock style from these drawings to this classical style, but they both have these striking beats that I can start to get my arms and body moving to.
Wow.
So the one doesn't have a lot of mathematics attached to it, but the classical is very mathematical, is very measured.
Yeah, yeah.
So your future,
Interesting.
where are you going with your art? Are you going anywhere special? Are you going to stay on abstract or expressionist, or will there be something else that might tickle your fancy?
It's taken a lifetime for me to realize that I have to follow what's in my heart and my head. And right now, as long as I'm happy doing what I'm doing, I'll
Yeah.
continue to do it.
Yeah.
But with that said, a week or so ago returned from South America, and I had down there started a painting that was of tall buildings, and I rarely do people, but I had a couple walking the dog that were kind of dark and almost silhouette-y. Then I had this person turn and look at the viewer, and so all the way back on the airplane, I'm sitting there trying to do my trees with my music and things and my abstracts, and suddenly all these faces started coming out in these little thumbnail sketches.
That's cute.
So I could be headed that direction.
So what would you like to say to my audience to encourage them to do what they really want to do, as long as it doesn't harm them or anyone else?
Right. I would basically say, if you have a passion, if something in your heart and your mind, you enjoy a hobby, whether it's art or whether it is skiing or anything, follow your passion. You may have to wait until you're older and retired to enjoy it fully.
Takes practice.
Or you may find a way, an avenue that you quit that daily punch the clock corporate job and go and do what you want to do. So, but follow your heart. That's the best thing.
John, what did you learn from today?
Well, how can I count the ways and the things I've learned? I think that what's come to me is that there's art in nearly everything that you do, and also I'm impressed very much with how you use different senses, your sight, your sound, your feeling, and put them all into the canvas so that it's really a total multimedia experience for you, and it's got to be a wonderful experience for the viewer.
And with that, it's getting towards the end of the show. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me, Patty.
Thanks. Must be had. Nice to be had. Oh, look at this.
You've got some chalk.
Hi, John. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You know, for next week, we're going to have such a wonderful guest. I won't tell you till next week, eh? So thank you. Thank you, Avon Waters, the Artist of the Americas, and my co-host, John Dickmeyer. And we'll see you next week. Love you.
Godspeed, my love, until we meet again. You're always in my heart and every dream. Don't let this time apart give in to all our fears. God will keep us close from up above. So until we meet again, Godspeed, my love. God is with us all.